Wolf has such a great way of explaining historical materialism.
Marxists take a particular view of history called historical materialism. How is the current area of capitalism fit into the long history? I think you've mentioned this before, just how this is just the latest chapter in a long history of economic development.
Dalton 710, thank you for the 5 gifted.
The basic idea is that every economic system has in it conflicting forces. The language in Marxism is internal contradictions. The system has in it problems it is constantly struggling with because they're built into the system. And for long periods of time, it finds solutions. But in the end, historical materialism says, the internal contradictions become unmanageable, and then there's a kind of explosion, the system dies, and a new one is born. So we had slavery, for example, in various parts of the world. It was born, it evolved, it had its contradictions. For example, the contradiction that the only way a slave system can continue is if you replace the slaves that reach old age and die, and that's become a big problem for many slave societies. And so eventually, the slavery couldn't solve its problems, and it died, replaced by feudalism in Europe, which went through the parallel process, and then it blew up. It couldn't solve its problems. So historical materialism begins to look at capitalism through the same lens. What are the internal contradictions? How do they bedevil the system? What solutions for a while have they found? But when and where might we get to a level of internal contradiction that makes the system tremble, makes it vulnerable, and at that point, if revolutionaries can see and understand what's going on, they can intervene to move to the next system, to get beyond this. Just like rebels overthrew slavery, rebels overthrew feudalism, the expectation of Marx was that capitalism would generate the contradictions, then the tensions, then the failed solutions.
Okay, let's continue with historical materialism.
That would then bring into being the rebels with the ideas of criticism, Marx himself being one of those, who would eventually move to the next system. To illustrate it as concretely as I can, let me give you an example of the kind of contradiction Marx found in capitalism that has been crucial for everybody else. And I pick it because it's so relevant right now in the United States and around the world. Every capitalist, I think most of the folks watching know this just from their personal life, every capitalist is always trying to either make more money or survive competitively by saving on his labor costs. One capitalist does it by substituting machines for working people, automating, getting a computer to do what he used to have 50 people do, etc., etc. Another capitalist does it by trying to get cheaper workers in place of more expensive ones, hiring women, if they're less expensive, to do the job that they used to pay men more for, hiring immigrants rather than native folks, moving to another part of the world where wages are much lower. We all know that. So capitalists are always trying to save on labor costs because they can make a better profit if they do that. But here comes the contradiction. If all capitalists are reducing the number of workers they pay or reducing the pay they give to their workers, what will result is that the working people have less and less money. And if they have less and less money, they can't buy.
Bro, he's describing historical materialism and how alienation works, and also how profits inevitably decline. Like the rate of profit inevitably declines under a capitalist mode of production in under 6 minutes, and you're like, oh, it's so long. It's like, what are you talking about? He just summarized like fundamental, like very important Marxist concepts, and you're just like upset that it's like it doesn't have Subway Surfers playing in the background. That's what it is, right?
What the capitalists are producing to sell. The capitalists, therefore, are destroying themselves, but they have no choice. They have to save on the labor outlay, and then that comes back and bites them in the rear end because there's no demand.
This is what we mean when we talk about the rate of profit and its tendency to decline, okay? This is what it is. It's that ultimately, when you are constantly if you're constantly trying to make more money, okay, generate additional profit, capital owners do this, okay? They're constantly trying to engage in permanent growth. You inevitably end up running out of people to exploit, or you end up running out of people who will buy, okay? That's it. It's like the easiest way to comprehend it. Amazon as a distribution facility has to have one pretty much everywhere, right? Because like you have to have a site where you get the packages and then deliver those packages, right? And someone has to deliver those packages. So Amazon's labor practices are for obvious reasons, and they create this system of turnover where they realize that if someone is working in a distribution facility for over like 4 years, 5 years, they're going to end up recognizing that their, place in society, their fundamentally important productive forces are being undermined with awful wages, right? You're going to organize your workplace if you realize like I should be getting paid more. I'm doing profoundly important work. So in order to combat that, Amazon will basically churn. Like they'll engage in a practice where they every couple of years they're like, all right, you're done. We'll pay you to leave, basically. Okay. And now they're running out of workers because you're running out of people to exploit. Is the rate of profit falling a fact? Isn't the actual decline in rate of profit negligible? Capitalists can easily find other avenues of exploitation. You just literally described. You're describing the entire reason why this system should inevitably implode. Like they will turn around. And that's why you see in the United States of America, in many states, you're like, all right, why don't we go back to child labor? Why don't we go back to slavery, which already exists in the form of the 13th Amendment, in the form of like immigration detention centers, in the form of like, prison labor. It already exists. So does child labor, but they're just trying to, basically legalize it. Why? Because when you run out of avenues, when you run out of people to exploit, you got to find new people. You got to find a new a group of individuals that you can do that with. Stock market is key in this constant profit-seeking motivation because every shareholder wants a return every quarter or even more frequently. Value of the company must go up. Paying your employees gets in the way of that. Yeah, it is a fundamentally broken process because like some of those shareholders who now feel like they have an ownership stake in the stock market, who think that like, my 401k is in the stock market, like my future is in the stock market, are workers themselves. And they don't recognize that like, because they don't have a pension plan, because they don't have like an internal mechanism that will offer them a better future once they're done being a productive laborer, okay? They think that like the only way for them to survive, and in many respects this is true, is their 401k. So they are tied to the stock market's performance. Now they feel like they have a stake, a dog in the fight. But they don't. The falling rate of profit also, when you replace workers with machines, and only workers can produce surplus value because of the difference between socially necessary labor time and surplus labor. Less workers and more machines means there's less surplus value extraction. Who are you going to sell the burgers to? Who are you going to sell the TVs to if the people that are making the TVs can't buy it, and they can't overseas, and the people that you're trying to sell the TVs are also increasingly in a worse position overall because their jobs in their factories that allowed them to have purchasing power for television was literally shipped overseas to cheaper producers of goods and commodities. That's how this works. Ultimately, you got no one who can afford the burgers. That's why you see all these like new sectors pop up, like the yacht industry. Okay? Well, fear not. There's a new profit sector now. Fear not. There's a new frontier. You got crypto. Let's do cryptocurrency. Let's just literally have an unverified, unsecured security, okay? That has nothing, no tangible benefits, nothing whatsoever. That basically is just a gamble, okay?
You've been so successful becoming rich as a capitalist. These kinds of contradictions for Marx are the beginning of the end of a system. It papers it over. For example, when people couldn't buy in the 1970s, the capitalist system kept going anyway. How did it do that? How did it keep going when the people didn't have enough money from their wages to buy? The solution was credit. We loaded the world up. House credit, that's your mortgage. Car payment credit, nobody buys a car except by paying out. Credit cards, which didn't exist before the 1970s.
Oh, yeah, this is what I was going to say. The financialization of every avenue in every sector is also part of the problem. Nobody actually producing anything meaningful other than like weapons for the most part. But even weapons, like Boeing is a great example. Like every industrial powerhouse, even in the military industrial complex, which actually does manufacture here, okay, and ships it overseas, is still like engaging in financial tools to tweak their stock prices ultimately, because the speculative market, the stock market, has created a system where that's infinitely better. That's infinitely better for you. You wipe out half your labor force after doing a merger your stock price goes up. That means higher number, better value, you're doing good, you're doing great. Meanwhile, you just wiped out half your labor force. Is that good for the economy? No. But hey, you can't buy a TV. Now you can get in debt to purchase the TV. There are payment plans for Domino's Pizza. Every company sells their own version of a credit card. How do you think that's good? I literally do not own a credit card, okay? It just like doesn't fit in my brain. I don't understand it. And I didn't have a credit card when I was poor. I don't have a credit card now when I'm rich. I just don't have it. I don't get it. Rich people's take, I love that. I love that you said that, because you think I was born like this? Are you out of your mind?
But traveling businessmen, and only a small number of them. And then when that was not enough, we loaded up, for the first time in American history, an entire generation of students who can't get a degree without loading up with tens of thousands of dollars of debt. We kept the system going. People could buy stuff, even though their wages didn't pay for it, by borrowing. And in 2008, the predictable happened. It turned out your fix only lasts for a while. You really have to ask, in a way that many of us as Marxists hadn't done for most of our lives. The problems of capitalism now are so severe, so systemic, so global, that we're beginning to wonder whether this system is going to find a way out. The Marxists are not the only ones wondering whether this system is coming to an end. The people on the other side of the political fence are very worried too.
Yeah, you have billionaires writing op-eds. The
Absolutely.
pitchforks are coming for the plutocrats because
Exactly.
they know.
Marx didn't own a Porsche, checkmate socialist. I think Engels owned more than a Porsche, but anyway, it doesn't matter.